First of all, let me thank you very much for having invited me to give this presentation. And I'm very happy to be here because apart from the nice relationships which are inside this group, there are so many people involved in a field which is somehow new for me, and I'm sure that there will be a lot of interesting reaction and comments, and I can learn a lot on this area. Now, the aim of this paper is to try to investigate cultural tourist profiles. And basically, we try to define cultural tourist profile using a kind of unique data set, which is the result of research carried out in Piemonte in 2008 by a research center, Si.T.I, Innovative Territorial Systems, which was charged by regional government to provide research on an area, the Lake of Horta, in order to understand, in fact, behavior of visitors and help regional government to organize destination management. That research provided quite many data on various aspects of the destination, and we are involved only in using quite a short a set of this data, mainly useful to try to understand the features of the profiles of these of these tourists, and to estimate the factors which are related to the choice of strong, motivated tourists. The dataset, I say the dataset is unique for one reason, because the same people did answer a questionnaire, and at the same time were using GPS technology to, in fact, monitor their spatial temporal flows, and therefore there is the possibility of understanding and comparing what are the revealed preferences of these people moving through the GPS, and what are their stated preferences to questionnaire. And I'm happy to the presentation, the first presentation, the one by Cheval, basically I start from the same point of view, the idea that there might be not a lack of coincidence between revealed preferences and stated preferences. Now, basically, just a few words to say that the main interest was for this elusive concept of cultural tourist. And for one, my main topic is public finance, public economics, and many times public policies are somehow motivated by the enormous impact of culture on development, by the fact that even if you restore one stone, eventually millions of people will come and flow and visit that place. And so in many cases this idea of cultural tourism provides motivation and for public policies and for investing public money, which sometimes doesn't seem to rely upon sound basis and upon sound empirical investigation. So this concept of cultural tourism is quite elusive. It's elusive for two reasons. First of all, because of measurement problems. There are no data. Even international organizations provide a lot of data on tourism as such, but there are not statistics, reliable statistics distinguishing between leisure and culturally motivated tourists. Though there are a lot of different sources showing that the culture is a relevant factor for people moving, and in this direction there are data from the Eurobarometer saying that more than 25% of Europeans move on the grounds of believe that cultural heritage is relevant as a destination, or there are more than 50% of people coming to Europe which are motivated by heritage. There are a lot of scattered figures collected with from many sources saying that culture is something which is relevant at macro level for inducing people movement. But still, there is a lack of reliable microdata. On the other hand, there is also a definition problem, in the sense that when we talk about cultural tourism, there are different approaches, a very wide one, the one by economists or WTO, which basically tourism activities refer to all the experiences that are absorbed by the visitors. But then, even if you want to have a more focused definition which refers to consumption of culture, still depends on what culture we are going to refer to, whether just the sites and monuments, or whether a large range of activities which include cultural events, architecture, food, creative activities, material culture, and so on. So, and also because, I mean, in the literature, the cultural economics is evolved to enlarging the concept of culture, so this is quite interesting from our point of view. In this case, we try to think in terms of what can be the motivation of a tourist, and in the sense that whether heritage or cultural heritage can be a motivation for visiting a place, and in the specific case, our case study. And there are a lot of papers in thinking in terms of trying to suggest two-dimensional approach, in fact, in which tourists are examined both on the basis of motivation and also on the level of intensity of visit. And one of the presentation before was thinking in terms of intensity in trying to measure. While, of course, so far, most of the studies are in the sense of asking questions and declaring, and people declaring how motivated they are, or how intense is their participation to that experience that they are having. And so there are, in the literature, there are, for instance, the paper I mentioned by McKelker, classify tourists on cultural tourists on the ground of 5 categories, combining together motivation and experience. Now, in our case, we focus attention on the Orta Lake, which is in Piemonte, which is a territorial system which in a way is interesting because combines different type of attractions, not only heritage attraction, but also environmental attractions, and also just recreational open-air sport attractions. And there is among the cultural attractions, there is one which is the Sacro Monte d'Orta, which is special interest because it is included in UNESCO World Heritage List as a part of the system of Sacri Monte del Piemonte. From another point of view, this area is interesting, and basically this is the reason why the regional government asked to run the research to this research center which provides data, because this is an area in transition, an economic system moving from a manufacturing industry to new forms of economic activity, and the strong debate was whether there should be an attempt of fostering niche tourism or mass tourism. So, I mean, understanding what people going there already do and how behave was a good idea for the regional government to understand better how to move. Now, we use data provided by in research carried out on summer 2008 using GPS data loggers, and I don't go through because people before, better than me, have gone through these devices. And basically, there were more than 500 questionnaires, and people, 170 groups, which were given these devices. And overall, 1,400 hours in total survey were produced, and basically there was a map. All the attractions in the area were mapped. This is the map of the cultural attractions. And in order to define, to obtain data on time and position tourism related to the various different attractions. Now, using the empirical analysis, so apart from GPS, I was saying, used also questionnaires. And the idea of using questionnaires on the same people was to try to identify homogeneous cultural tourist profiles on the basis of the answer they were given to the, first of all, to the motivation. Whether the motivation for culture was, what was the most important motivation for to go there, not the most important, what was the very important and not important as a motivation for them to go there. And they could answer to more than one option, and this picture shows basically for the whole sample and for the three subsamples what were the motivations of people. In fact, basically, if we would focus attention on very motivated cultural tourists, those for whom heritage was very important, it seems to have a profile which is more related with respect to the others, to environment, to the other food and wine, and recreation outdoor. While motivation for environment is less relevant for the second group, which was just heritage is important. So, I mean, our attention is focused on these very important heritage, very strongly motivated people, but then we examine a larger subsample containing both those who said that heritage was very important and those who said that heritage was important. And this, to do so, we used some variables which were obtained, first of all, in fact, on the grounds of the different motivation I was saying before. Secondly, on the behavior, model behavior for the declared spending for accommodation, restaurant, transport, heritage, culture. Sorry? 5 minutes. Okay. And this is the list of the relevant variable we were using, depending, in fact, on questionnaires as well as on GPS. On the empirical analysis conducted through ANOVA, first stage, we see that, in fact, there are statistically significant differences between the group of very motivated cultural tourists and the group on the others. In the sense that, and what is I would like to stress in this table is that as I was saying, the very motivated tourists tend to spend more for accommodation or for cultural attractions, are more interested in the environment, and are foreigners, but they significantly differ in terms of time. In the sense that rather than you would expect that they would spend more time in culture, but on the contrary, they don't spend their actual behavior is different because they tend to spend more time in relax, and this gives us an idea. The idea that first of all the idea of culture is something which is, for these well-educated people, the idea of culture is something which ought to be said as very relevant, but in practice they don't behave like as they declare. And on the other hand, if we look at the other column, the column of the far column, which took into consideration those who say important and very important, so a larger group, we see that for these people who indeed, also in terms of time related to culture, there is a significant difference, which in fact say that their behavior tend to coincide with their state preferences. Lastly, we try to assess what factors were related to the choice of strongly motivated cultural tourists, estimating separately the effect of motivations, behavior, and personal characteristics, and using a dichotomic variable, which is a value of 1, if heritage motivation is important and very important. And again, I underlined one special case. First of all, we get confirmation that these people are also interested in environment. So there is a kind of relationship between those who are motivated toward culture and at the same time appreciate the characteristic, the environmental characteristics are related to their preferences, and also they are not interested in culture, in material culture, in food, wine, in what we, on the other hand, would imagine or would say on the grounds of a lot of literature that is being intangible heritage is closely related to the interest for tangible heritage. And finally, these people tend to tend to plan their time for themselves. They try to get informed, and then they belong to the kind of people who are well educated and tend to plan their own visit. In conclusion, I think that what we can get from this simple example of empirical investigation, first of all, is that offer, unlike other studies, the possibility of having a wider perspective which is not related only to heritage, as happens in many cases when empirical investigation is carried on sites where just culture is consumed. And another thing is that there is this relationship between heritage and environment, which comes up quite clearly, suggesting that there is an overall interest for quality of life for those people, for those cultural tourists, or those people who are motivated in visiting in culture. While, as I was saying before, the perspectives seem to have, these people seem to have a narrower heritage-oriented profile, less interested in other forms of culture, less than we would expect. And finally, I think that the fact that there is this difference between stated preferences and revealed preferences suggests that there is a risk of overestimation of cultural motivation whenever we run questionnaires. And in the light of what was saying before, this could have relevant policy implications, in the sense that before saying that people are strongly motivated to visit heritage, and therefore this provides a strong motivation for investing money in that direction, probably a sound evaluation of people behaviors could be useful in order to avoid oversized investment. And finally, there are of course further developments which could make the analysis more focused, but we didn't have enough data in this data set in order to focus better on itineraries put in practice by tourists to understand better behaviors and therefore the eventual differences with preferences. Thank you.